All right, everyone. Thank you for joining Books and Bounty tonight. Before we get started, a couple shout outs to our partners, including Donnie Glover over at BeMoreNews.com, which is home of the Emmy nominated Donnie Glover Morning Show, which you can catch now on Channel 2 News here locally in Baltimore. Also at BeMoreNews.com, make sure you sign up for the newsletter where you can catch exclusive content from Books and Bounty and others. I also want to give a special shout out to Dr. Leroy McKenzie Jr., aka Dr. LJ Speaks, aka the Impact Builder, over there at JNF Enterprises, who offers business consultation and distribution services with integrity and impeccable customer service. Everyone, welcome Hannah Templer. Uh, with an exponentially increasing fan base, support from a network of indie bookshops and sellers, and signed titles with Top Shelf Productions and Scholastic, Hannah Templer, Shooting Star, has arrived. Debuting as a bestseller, including at our local indie bookstore Dreamers and Make Believers, her Cosmoknights series is a disco Cosmo neo medieval ride across the galaxy. You have seen her work in series like Tomb Raider, Doctor Who, and a favorite in my home, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles TMNT series. Her color work and illustrations range from comics to graphic novels to games. Her characters are endearing, clever, queer, and downright sexy. Welcome, Hannah Templer.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you for having me.
Thank you so much for being here. So, I'm gonna give you a little bit of background. I told you this previously when we were messaging via email, but I came across your work by recommendation through Sam over at Dreamers and Make Believers. It's a
Mhm.
women queer owned and operated independent bookseller that got its start right around the pandemic. Over in a small neighborhood of Highlandtown here in Baltimore. And the community there and all over has really come together and patronized with enthusiasm this store. My teenager and we've been going there since they've opened, and I picked up Cosmoknights from them as when I went there, I was letting them know I was doing the graphic novel series, and Sam immediately went over. I was like, "Oh, well, of course you have
Aw.
to read Hannah Templar," and I don't know if they still knew this, but I got a signed
Oh yeah.
copy.
Yes. I'm over there quite a bit, so I try to sign their sign their copies. That's
So tell
great.
me a little bit about your time in Baltimore.
Okay, so I moved here in 2020, right at the start of the pandemic. I moved from Seattle and
Hmm.
just moved cross country. I have some really great friends here, and just kind of wanted a new start in a new place. So I've been here for 4 years now, and the first couple of years of that were obviously mostly inside, but it's been nice to get out a little bit more and explore the city. I really, really like it here. I'm very happy here. So
We'll definitely have to find some time to meet up in person,
yeah,
not just virtually, pretty soon after this, probably at Dreamers.
yeah.
Um, so I asked all of my special guests that come on the show when, whether they're readers, writers, artists, and everyone in between, the bookish people that appear here. Um, when did your passion for storytelling begin? Because sometimes it's I dabbled in art here, or I did something here, and then it took hold. But when did you really realize that you wanted to tell stories with your art?
Yeah. So as a kid, it was always the running joke in my family that I was a space cadet, like always thinking about like I had imaginary friends, and then I was writing stories about like unicorns and horses and like all these little characters. And right around when I turned like 10 or 11, I started really getting into like Digimon and some of the like Disney movies that were coming out around that time, which were like more teen leaning. So they had like Treasure Planet and Atlantis the Lost Empire. And I was like, this is it. This is the ultimate in storytelling. And I got really into like writing fan fiction and like kind of creating like original characters for those stories. And pretty quickly from there, I was like, I can write my own things that are also cool. So, kind of right around the age of like 10 or 11 is when I really started going for it and started drawing.
So what would you call your first exhibited or shown work. Some folks, for example, we had Astronym, who also is a colorist and comic
Mhm.
artist, on last show, and she recognized a piece of art that her preschool teacher hung up and kept on the preschool wall
Oh,
for decades, right? And she came back
yeah.
as a teenager, and that sparked a different, the passion really settled into her. So, what would you say would be your first published piece of art?
Probably similar. When I was in high school, that's when like people started taking me a little more seriously with my art. And I did this really big painting of an iceberg for like one of my senior projects because I was doing stuff about climate change. And it's like this huge, like 4 by 6 foot painting on wood panel of an iceberg. And my school was like, hey, can we buy this from you? And I was a 17-year-old. I was like, I don't know. Yeah, okay. And I guess it's still up there now, which is really cool. So,
It's cool. And then
yeah.
you probably go past it and say, you know what? Well, that's Hannah Templer. um, so Cosmo Nights has really taken off. You're on book two. Book two is out now,
That's
and
right.
the story is about a group of what has been quoted as ragtag space gays off on a neo-medieval mission against the patriarchy, and has themes of found family, camaraderie, empathy. And really looks at, and I think you do a really, really great job in character building. But now that the story's out there and that it's catching, it's caught a little wave here. Is there anything that you think readers are missing? Like, I want to know more of the mechanics of the world
Mm.
and Caslon and the places like that. Like, why three moons? Like, are there little things that the readers maybe miss along the way, or that we can find from book one to book two that we should pay attention to?
That's a really good question. It's funny because like the way that I world build is extremely expansive. So like I do have everything written out. Like yes, I know what's on all these 3 moons, and yes, I know like every single planet, but none of that stuff or very little of that stuff makes it to the final page. Like the way that it makes it into the book is like very like you have to be an eagle-eyed viewer to pick up that stuff. Like oh, there are 3 moons, right? That's like kind of one of the big, like one of the first big hints that we are in outer space and this isn't planet Earth is like you see the 2 moons in the sky. I'm trying to think like the thing I try to avoid with my world building is like a lot of exposition where I'm explaining like stuff that's not directly relevant to the
And I
story. But
appreciate
my favorite, yeah, my favorite is when it kind of shows up really organically. So like, and there's like a lot of things like that. Like in the first book, um, one of the characters, for example, is wearing this like pink and white fur coat in one of the scenes.
that. Yeah.
And it's made from the fur of the species of space tiger that is on a different page. Like there's a lot of little connections like that and a
I need
little
to
bit of
like put that
foreshadowing.
somewhere here later on.
I can show it actually.
Oh
Let
yeah.
me see. Yeah, I don't want to like get too many spoilers too, but the first book has been out for a while. Okay, yes. So this character right
Uh-huh.
here, obviously it might be backwards, but she's wearing
Oh yes, I remember her.
this coat,
Hmm.
right?
That was the yes. I don't want to give away what she actually her, and she has a important role towards the end of the story. So
Yes, she does. But anyway, yes, there's like lots of little things, a lot of just like small references to like gladiator culture and medieval culture that isn't necessarily like you have to kind of keep an eye out for that stuff, which is fun. So
and and that's what I really liked about this book. It was like it was serious business, right? You did an interview with Christian Angeles,
mhm,
and you discussed there, and she discussed about the importance of found family in the queer community.
mhm,
There's obvious themes about rebelling against the patriarchy and finding agency over oneself, one's body, and particularly, and but it is also a very fun read. And
thank you.
while I'm learning more about graphic novels, and you see here I have a variety of them,
Hmm.
what I find and what a lot of research shows is that graphic novels, you're able to tackle complex subjects, complex worlds in a more digestible and accessible way. But I want to talk about that, but I want to talk
Hmm.
about like your character building and
Mm.
um, how even like a lot of themes, a lot of the artwork. stuck with me out of the books that I've been reading, but your characters stuck with me so much. They were funny and witty and clever. They all gave what they needed to in their own roles as this ragtag group of space gays. But Cassandra Sloan stuck out to me because one, you put thirst traps of Cass all through and then
Yeah.
and everyone else Cass is all up and down this book. And so I want to talk to you about your muse and inspiration, not
Mm.
only behind the themes, but also the characters in the book.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I'll start off by saying, like, when I write, I find it most interesting to be very character driven. And one thing that always makes me laugh about Cosmoknights is like it is so much about their relationships and friendships and their dynamic as a found family that sometimes it almost feels like the fact that they're in space is like kind of incidental. Like I really wanted it to feel very familiar, and obviously it's a very campy book. Like the stakes are very high. It's got like robots and swords and punching, but a lot of the book actually happens in these like very quiet moments with the characters talking about their identities or talking about like the things that they care about. And so I really enjoy writing that way, especially when it comes to sci-fi. I think it's it's the most interesting thing to me about like, how do these characters like navigate this kind of world? And in some ways, like the world that they navigate is very alien, but the world that many like marginalized people is also very navigate is also very alien, right? Like these worlds were built without us, and things are built without marginalized identities considered at all. And so
Yeah.
that kind of feels like a really just like great way to build characters. And obviously every character is like super super personal. I feel like I split pieces of myself into like each of the characters. And so you've got like Pan, who's the protagonist, and she's sort of this baby gay who's like going out to find herself and explore the world. And that was very much in tune with like where I was at when I was writing this. I had just come out and I was like the young, fresh baby gay, like who didn't know anything.
How old were you when you
Um,
started writing Cosmo Nights? Not to cut you
uh,
off, I'm sorry.
no, no, not at all. I was 27. So this was, yeah, I started it in 2017 around then. And then it like solidified into a book in 2019. Um, but yeah, and Cass is a great example. Like with Cass, I really wanted to like celebrate butch women and like butch lesbians. I think there's like such an such a like underappreciation for like how like powerful and sexy and fun and like emotional like butch women can be, and like very, I don't know, I think they can often be quite like portrayed as quite flat or like emotionless, or I don't know, and it that didn't resonate with me. So Cass really like it
See,
was such a oh sorry, go ahead.
no, just say she is the complete opposite. She is not
Yeah,
emotionless. She's not boring at
yes,
all. She is in your
exactly.
face. She is cocky, full of bravado, but also like quite charming and endearing as well. Like she's a bit of a softie, especially for her wife B,
Yeah,
and even for Pan as well.
yeah.
Well, at first it was easy to win her over. Let's just put it that way.
Yeah, yeah, she's a softie. Um, but yeah, and again, like her drive to like fight for her own freedom again was like very much my own experience at the time, kind of when I came out, because I came out pretty late in life and like came from a very heteronormative sort of background, and my family was quite religious, and so like her as nerdy as it is, like her, fighting tooth and nail in the ring really did feel like how it felt coming out for me sort of at that time in my life, and really like staking my claim like in my identity and who I was. So yeah, there's like little pieces of me in every character.
That's awesome. I'm actually, happy like the sort of catharsis and everything that you got to go through with Cosmo Night.
Yeah.
Success you're seeing in the story just let you know how many other people have a similar story to speak to it and the impact that it's having on folks. Uh,
Hmm.
and so when you talked about like you're building the characters and
Mm.
creating the emotions, you do that in other ways as well. And you are a colorist by profession. So I want to talk to you how you got to that role because a lot of the a couple of the latest graphic novels that I've read, Astronym, even Tim Fielder, they have done plenty of color work and have the title of colorist in their bio. And your use of color really does invoke tone and setting in very strategic ways. I've mentioned to you there's a scene in the book. I'm going to pull it up for folks to see right now on pages 104 to 110 in my version,
Mm-hmm.
um, where there's like a fight scene, shootout scene. There's a lot of action going on. Um, and it's all reds and orange and dark purples. It's like danger and like get out of here and like what is a death may happen. And then you like to sort of opposed to that, and then in the next couple of scenes right after that, you're in Kaz and B's ship. I don't know if the name was Volk or if that was the brand of the name. I was looking for it in the book to see if their ship had a name. But
It's the name of the ship, yeah.
and so Volk is all like pink pastels and purples
Hmm.
and quiet and soft, and there's like a
Yeah.
plant somewhere, and it's like that tranquil home for the gladiators, the Cosmoknights. So how did you come to that title and that role of colorist? Is it something you
Mm.
sought or something that sort of found you?
Well, I do a lot of colors just because it like comes to me very naturally. It's like the thing that I enjoy most. I think that like a lot of different artists have like really specific things they enjoy. They like, inking, or they like doing the pencils or the sketches. I really just love color. And it always makes me laugh when I have to talk about it because I would be the worst teacher because truly I'm like, I don't know. I just follow my heart. But I do think there is like some, like it is pretty systematic the way I approach it when it comes down to it. So I usually what I do is when I'm working on a project, I collect like a lot of like images. So like if I see like the inside of a restaurant I'll like take a photo and be like, oh, the vibe in there is like really cool. Or like a nice sunset, or I'll see a photo or another piece of art someone posted and I'll be like, oh, I really like what they did with the color there. And so I'm collecting this like huge inventory of stuff that then when it's time to start a project, I can just look through and be like, and I create a map of like, oh yeah, that's like how I want this scene to feel, and that's how I want this scene to feel, and like, basically pull a big map of references. And when it comes to the script, I actually write the script page by page, and what I will do is go through and kind of give each page of ranking from 1 to 5 of like how intense the scene is. So like if it's a fight scene, it'll be a 5, but if it's like a scene where they're all talking, it'll be like a 1 or 2, but maybe if it gets super emotional, it'll go up. And once I have that, I can kind of use that to judge like, okay, this is, if I can hold back here, I can really like go crazy on this page. And
Right. I mean, well,
because
is there, like, does that happen? Is there a whole
well,
back page?
what's really funny is like it's a very colorful book. And yeah.
I love it.
And one thing that was really important to me, that like I always talk about with Cosmoknights is that this book is technically dystopian, right? It's set in this dystopia where like
Yeah.
there are knights and jousting over like princesses' hands, and it's super sexist and archaic. But at the same time, like this book, I really wanted to exude like queer joy and queer celebration. So like opening it, I wanted it just to be like, bam, like this is such a like joyful, bright, colorful book. Even in like its quieter scenes, it's very exuberant.
Yes.
And that was really important to me because I feel like yeah, I want to celebrate like found family, queer joy, like queer victories. Even that was really important to me with this series. So,
So talk about some queer victories. Let's
mm-hmm.
talk about some of the victories in your life. How does it feel? Let's talk about your first time Cosmoknights was nominated for award, and then let's
Oh
talk about
yeah.
some upcoming projects you have. Like, are there going to be more sexy characters in Roxy Romance Reborn? Like, that's what I want to know. Um, and so, what's coming up next? Some things are coming up next for your particular projects, Hannah.
Yeah. So, well, as you know, I have the second book of Cosmoknights that came out. Now it's been like almost 2 years, which is wild to me. No, it's been a year and a half. So I'm working on the third book. That's like my big thing right now. It's a trilogy, and I am really excited for the third book. I think it's gonna it's just a very fun, complete story, all 3 books. So that's something I'm really excited about, and that's kind of my main thing. I have also been doing, you mentioned it earlier, some middle grade novels with Scholastic. So I just finished up my 2nd book with that. And that's really fun. That'll be out next September, I believe. And then I have another project that's starting that is secret that I can't talk about, but that'll be a really, really cool one.
You have to let me know first.
Yeah, you'll definitely see it, and I'll be able to talk about it some more next year, but we're just starting it. So
okay.
But the thing I'm really excited about, and this is kind of a few years down the line, but I have kind of another series, not series even, another book after Cosmoknights, but I'd like it to be one book. And it's sort of like a dark horror comedy, but it's very queer as well. A very different tone, but it's sort of the same fun, self-contained adventure. And I'm very, very excited to write that. That'll be really fun. So
that sounds like right up my alley. I love dark fiction,
yeah,
fiction, science fiction. I actually have Occultist by Laura Perez.
Oh yeah.
And that's dark fiction. And that's
Yeah.
actually a short series, a series of shorts within the graphic novel. Just finished reading this really, really interesting art, interesting story. I think I have more questions than answers about this one, but I talk about interesting color work in that dark fiction that's
cool.
on the TBR shelf. So we'll back up a little bit about this
Sure.
this process. It is very systematic.
Mhm.
And you seem like you have a vision and you're very forthright in getting there. But you also have an editor that you acknowledge, Lee, in the back of book 1 of Cosmoknights. So as an
Yeah.
editor myself, not as familiar with the process of how illustration feeds into the final product beyond the work that I've done in scholarly and academic work. How was that relationship built? How did you find Lee? And what's that process like when it comes to actually revising in her feedback and constructive criticism of the art itself?
Yeah. Yeah, that's a great question. It's really there are a lot of things that are very similar to just prose editing, and then there's a lot of things that obviously are very unique to comics. So I found Lee because I started doing Cosmoknights on my own. I was just at a point in my life where I was like, I really want to be a cartoonist, and I had kind of been in a career that I wasn't super happy about, and I was like, this is my dream. I'm gonna do it. I'm just gonna make the thing I want to make, and doesn't matter if anyone cares. So I started making Cosmoknights, and I put it online, and my editor Lee actually found it because it gained a bunch of traction right when it went up. Just people, it resonated with people. It was something that by word of mouth kind of got around. So he found it and immediately emailed me. And one of his first emails to me was, "Is this Pacific Rim with lesbians?" And I was like, I thought that was so funny. I was like, well, not quite, but yeah, let's talk about it. And he really was really excited about it and was like, yeah, if you want to publish this, I'm in, which is totally nuts. That never happens. It was just the right place, the right time, things fell into place, which was so cool.
For the pun, the stars aligned.
Yeah. Yes, exactly. So that was very, very exciting. I was coming, again, like I said, out of a career as a graphic designer. So I had drawing skills and visual skills, but this was very new to me, kind of the editing process and working in books. And Lee has just been a really great fit because the way that I work on Cosmoknights is I get a lot of creative freedom, and the contract is kind of built around a royalties payout rather than a big advance. So it's sort of a low risk endeavor for both me and the publisher, right? Because if it sells well, then I get paid. So I was able to kind of get a lot of creative freedom through the contract that way. And Lee has a great eye for the tone and style of the story. He totally understands that it's a little bit campy, it's a little bit silly. We don't need to overthink the politics of this world, or it is high stakes, but it's not serious. I mean, there's a lot of tongue in cheek stuff. And so he has a great eye for that. And what's really great about our relationship is like I love getting feedback, especially from like a good editor who like takes my work seriously, you know, has like thoughtful questions. And like I love that feedback because with a project like this, you get in your own head and it's really hard to like zoom out and see things. And Lee is so good at like bringing that back.
Mm-hmm.
But at the same time, he's been really good because obviously when you're like a marginalized writer or you're writing from an identity that isn't commonly written from, there are going to be things where, you know, like he misses the mark on some feedback. And I'm like, actually, no, I really want like, it's really important to me that this character behaves this way because of XYZ or like this personal experience. And then he's like, oh, cool, great, go for it. Like, no problem. So it's like this very easy, trusting relationship, which I really like. And he has,
that even when
yeah,
even when an editor gives you feedback you don't agree with, it forces you to sort of argue that point home and
yeah,
maybe go back and miss some hole, fill in some holes that you didn't fit, wouldn't have thought, filled in
yes,
before.
that's so
Like you
true.
said, you're not taking a step back away from it a bit. So yeah, I like that dynamic, and I like the fact that you have the relationship where she can provide that honest, or he can provide that honest feedback for you.
Yeah. Yeah, no, it's a really great working relationship. So yeah, I'm very grateful. Got very lucky with this editor.
And so you seem to make sure that not only when you're going forth on different projects and partnering with folks that you have a certain amount of agency and
Yeah.
creative freedom, but you also want to align yourself with organizations and other folks who are mission driven and passionate for a sense of diversity and not only characters but implied in the storyline as well. How do you pick and choose, like, what are you going to do next and who you're going to work with next? I know you can't tell us about the project you're working on
Sure,
with
sure.
other folks next, but how do you, because I can imagine there must be folks coming at you every so often now, like,
Yeah.
Hannah, can we work together, please? Hannah, can you do this for me? Hannah, can you, draw for me? Do this.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Yeah, that is such a learning process because I've definitely made mistakes, like taking projects that weren't like the right fit for me. And obviously, like I follow through on those things and I do as good of a job as I can do. But like it's really learning, like, okay, this works for me, this does not work for me at all. And the things that I look for, I really like working as much this is going to sound terrible, but I really like working as much as I can on like passion projects or things that aren't necessarily money driven. And so what I try and do is like fill my income needs with like freelance. So I take a lot of freelance projects with like larger corporations. Like I do some work for Blizzard on their like video game stuff, and I do work on like, I mean, even the like Scholastic contract, like I was adapting middle grade novels. So it wasn't my own writing. I was kind of like adapting someone else's work. And like that kind of work can pay the bills so that I can then do exciting stuff. Like Cosmoknights to me is really exciting because it's not necessarily as marketable because there aren't a lot of comps out there. And so it's sort of one of those things that I'm like, okay, I'm going to invest like my time into this. And I like to take on, like, I'm doing some independent projects right now with like some independent game writers. And to me, that's really exciting, like being able to do things with some smaller authors wherever I can, or like doing independent work like that. But I am very choosy, obviously. Like, I try to keep to stories that are queer. I like to tell queer stories, and I don't necessarily want to like invest my like all of my time into something that doesn't resonate with me personally. And why not? Because, I mean, like there are lots of people who can tell other stories. And
Now,
so,
see, this is nothing but women,
mm-hmm,
blackity black, and people of color. Like
mm-hmm,
that's what we have,
yeah,
and a few other diverse stories in between. Per
mm-hmm,
recommendation that the teenager they had to make sure they were in the graphic novel TBR. So
yeah,
yeah.
absolutely. There's some good books there.
Oh, really? What do you see? What caught your eye?
I know, well, I'm like, most of these are very familiar to me. Obviously, I know Ubik.
I just got
Fantastic book. Yeah.
I just got it.
Yes.
Looks like it's great because I think it's sort of retelling of some of the folk tales.
Mm-hmm,
So it'll be fun to like read it and then go back and look at what things are alluding to. Um,
mm-hmm,
and then there's a few other I'm not a nonfiction reader,
Mhm.
but I find that I can digest nonfiction in graphic novel form. So I have a few nonfiction titles as well.
Yes, that's great.
Speaking of um, legacy and impact here, what would you like not only the impact, particularly of Cosmoknights, to be? I know you're on book three now, so you're wrapping up that trilogy. But overall, what sort of trail would you like to leave behind you, Hannah, as you
Mm.
continue on your journey, your drawing journey?
Um, well, honestly, like my biggest thing and the thing that like all of my work revolves around is like I love women, and not just in a like I'm gay way, but in a like I just love celebrating like women and all their facets and like in all their gender identities and all their like multitudes. Like it's such an exciting thing for me to write. And especially, you know, queer women, especially butch lesbians, like that's something that's super important to me because again, like a lot of those characters get flattened out or very negative stereotypes or just like largely misunderstood. And so for me, like celebrating celebrating queer women and like celebrating queer joy, that's like the core of what I want to do, no matter what genre I'm working in. So
All right, I have two more questions for you.
sure.
One, and this, I guess they can probably, you can answer these questions together. You can sort of hit them both here. One is if you were in Dreamers and Make Believers and you're on display, Cosmo Knights 3 is out. Who should be on the display with Hannah Templer? So,
Hmm.
and that can sort of segue into the question that we always like to leave our folks with here at Books and Bounty. What are any bookish things, people, or organizations, or events
Hmm.
that you would like to recommend to our viewers?
Sure, absolutely. Gosh, when I think about like the display shelf perspective, I'm like, oh my gosh, I'd be so intimidated to like have any of my friends next to me. But I do have so many like amazing recommendations. So I'll start with Olivia Stevens, who is a incredible author. If you don't know her, she's got this series. It's just an online comic right now, but I'm sure will be published because it's just like mind blowing. It's called Darlin and Her Other Names. And it's a werewolf Western horror set in Colorado and Kansas in 1881. It's just like incredibly researched. It's like a beautifully drawn and told story. And like Olivia is like a master of dialogue. Like, never read anything like her work. It's incredible. Um, and another book I really wanted to talk about. So I love this book. I just read this and I've known the author for like years and years and years. It's called The Jellyfish. The author's name is Boom. And this book is beautiful. It's about this character who is slowly losing their vision over the course of the book. And so it's kind of about their journey to like living with a disability as well as functioning in community as like a disabled person and like what that means as, you know, they're quite literally like
Yeah.
losing their vision. I don't want to spoil the book because it's just really beautifully executed, but it's like such a like beautiful look at friendship and like again thriving in community, and mutual aid and like helping each other. It's beautiful. And then okay, so and then I've got Brownstone by Marjulia
Okay.
and Sam Tier. This is like a beautiful book. It's about like navigating heritage and you know like when you don't feel like you fit in, and it's just like a very beautifully illustrated and told story. Um, and then in terms of like organization, so obviously Dreamers and Make Believers is like a wonderful, great queer friendly bookstore. They're great. I also really love the Baltimore Beat. I love like independent journalism. Yeah, absolutely. We love that. Um, Specifically for and I was going to say Baltimore Safe Haven as well. So that's a local trans-led drop-in wellness center that provides like resources for trans folks. It's wonderful. Um, and then a couple of comics specific ones, Comics Advocacy Group and the Cartoonist Cooperative are like two really great organizations that are doing a lot of work to like give grants to to people in comics, and it's open to like anyone working in comics, so like writers, colorists, pencilers, inkers, anybody like doing that kind of work. And it's sort of like a network where we can all support each other. So.
Well, Hannah, thank you so much. You took that question so seriously. I really appreciate it.
Oh my gosh.
Great recommendations. Like,
Yeah.
for folks who are listening now, the when we post the highlights from this interview, links to all the reads and recommendations mentioned on today's interview will be posted along
Sure.
in the article and with the descriptions as well. So
Awesome.
don't feel like you guys have to keep your notes. We'll make sure that they get to you. All right. And so, Hannah, one thing I want to say, it was such a pleasure to read. It was so much fun.
Thank you.
I'll be getting a book too soon, and I will definitely have to meet up to talk about it, as well as once I get a hand on a couple of these others that you have recommended. Will you be making an appearance or anything anytime soon that folks can catch up with you? Any conferences or?
That's a great question. I might be doing things at Dreamers next year. I'm usually around there doing like local events. I don't have anything planned because I'm kind of in the phase of making the work, and then once the work is done, I go out and I show everybody the work, and then the cycle continues. So, yeah. So we'll see. Probably next summer I'll have more things lined up. But yeah.
All right, everyone. Thank you, Hannah, so much. Everyone, you can find
Thank
out more
you.
information about Hannah's work and her career at hannahtempler.com. And you can also check out booksandbounty.com in the next coming weeks for a book review of Cosmoknights and highlights from tonight's show. So, Hannah, thank you so much. See you around. If you want,
Thank you.
we'll be going on a brief intermission. If you want to hop on Twitch or no, I think we're
Yeah,
also
sure.
live on TikTok right now. But if you want to hop on Twitch and hop in the chat, feel free.
Okay. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank
Bye.
you. Have a great night.
Good night.
One second. Quick shout out to Inks and Pixels for the most recent follow on Twitch. If you are now watching on TikTok, please make sure that you are following Books and Bounty on Twitch in order to enter for a chance to win any of the bookish giveaways here at Books and Bounty, as well as follow the Bookish Brigade. We'll be announcing the next giveaway winner soon, and you'll be able to get your chance at winning a pick from any of the graphic novels to be read series that you've seen here at Books and Bounty. Quick shout out to our partners, J&F Enterprises, home of the impact builder, Mr. LJ Speaks himself, as well as Donnie Glover over at bmorenews.com. Excuse me, Donnie Glover over at bmorenews.com, home of the Emmy-nominated Donnie Glover Show, which you can catch every weekday morning at 9 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. To get full descriptions with links to all the reads and recommendations that you heard today, as well as full book reviews and other exclusive content, make sure you head over to booksandbounty.com and subscribe to get Books and Bounty content planted weekly to your inbox. Thanks, everyone, and you have a wonderful night.